service requirements. For years, my small staff has proven that it can work within a contract budget when operating the types of services required in this contract. And we proficiently maintain LTD's leased vehicles. The third reason to select South Lane Wheels is to recognize and value our long partnership that has benefited LTD's reputation as we actively informed audiences about LTD's investment in South Lane County, which is improving their connection with their local community and to regional destinations. Also, our extensive knowledge of the on-demand software and experience operating rural pilot services will make us effective in minimizing the public's concerns that service changes. May I proceed?
If you have a minute.
Because we know their past experience and are very patient to help riders navigate their transit options. Finally, I bring to your attention that South Lane Wheels filed a protest against the proposal scoring results because we do not feel that we were properly scored on the critical points described in the RFP. Because these rural pilot projects are an important investment in introducing public transportation to new areas and riders, I ask for your vote to award this contract to South Lane Wheels because of its proven rural service experiences, adaptability, and value as a trusted partner to help expand rural services in Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And as we know, that's an item later in our agenda. We'll be discussing it then. Any other public comments? Thank you. We'll move on to board reports. Lane Council of Governments, Pete, anything from them? MPC, Susan or Pete? Lane Act, Heather?
I defer to Jameson. I was not at the last Lane Act meeting.
Yes, there were quite a few people missed that. It coincided with the day that we were testifying in front of the Joint Transportation Commission. So quite a few people missed that, including us. But we'll forward the minutes when we receive those.
Strategic Planning Committee, I was unable to attend. Kelly, do you have any report?
I don't. I would defer to Jameson or Dave. I was participating online and
We have several members in the audience who are on the SPC. We also have an agenda item this evening adopting a work plan for the SPC. Finance Committee, Lawrence or Susan? And Real Estate Subcommittee, I don't believe anything's happening there, is there? No, great. Okay, we'll move on to CEO report. Jameson?
Okay, thank you, President. First item is Employee of the Month. So Sam, you want to come on up, and Jamie? Come on up, Jamie. Jamie joins us from the facilities area. So you see our frontline employees who take care of our property, whether it's in the building or at one of the stops or out in the public. And Jamie is really revered throughout the organization. Been here 2 years? A year and a half. And he's our Employee of the Month for June. And Sam, you want to talk about why Jamie was selected?
Certainly. Yes. So my name is Sam Buskell. I'm the Facilities Maintenance Supervisor for Lane Transit District. I have the happy honor of introducing Jamie to you tonight for the Employee of the Month for June. Jamie joined us a year and a half ago. It's been a fantastic addition to the team. Jamie really exemplifies what it means to be a public servant. So Jamie was nominated because while he was out performing his regular duties, he noticed an elderly person struggling to navigate a sidewalk with a shopping cart. That person fell and appeared to injure himself. So Jamie immediately provided first aid, offered to help the individual, and made sure that that person was taken care of and that he was confident that he could carry on about his business before he got back to his normal duties. So that's one of many examples of the kind of person that Jamie is. Jamie has a really big heart, not only for our community, but for his coworkers as well. He's always willing to jump in and lend a hand wherever it is. There are many folks in our organization who know that to be true because he's personally helped them. Jamie's, again, a fantastic addition to our team. Our team works really hard behind the scenes, and oftentimes our roles are go unnoticed. Sometimes facilities maintenance is a bit of a thankless job. But I always like to say, you never see a good maintenance person and everything just works. And Jamie, again, exemplifies that. We've got a fantastic crew and again, just thrilled that Jamie was awarded this award.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words, Jamie?
I guess I'd like to thank everybody for noticing. The things that I do, I'm very glad to do it. I'm glad you all don't mind doing it. I'm glad I have an awesome team that's so dynamic and stuff. And when I get stuck, they help. And when they get stuck, I help. And, you know, nobody is an island, you know, and this really fantastic workplace is what allows me to do whatever good things I do. And, you know, I'd like to thank everybody for making it as wonderful as it is.
Thank you.
We have some members of the family here. Oh, yeah, that's my wife and myself. Welcome. We have a little lapel pin. Peace. We've done all this. Plaque. Monetary award. Letter of thanks. And a wonderful poster. Thank you for all you do. Congratulations on why you do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, we'll go into the slideshow, and I'm going to operate this flawlessly because you all know I'll hear about this when I get home. All right, so the June report. I want to highlight a couple areas here. So the community engagement framework, we affectionately call it COCA. You know it as the Community Outreach Communications Assessment that the board adopted last August. You'll recall we brought in an external steering committee to help put that together. So we got it done, we got the framework done, we got it approved, and now it's time to actually use it. So we are operationalizing it. Eric Breitenstein in marketing is doing a really good job of applying it to different projects and clarifying how we do that, when we do that, what level of engagement we're in based on the project and how it impacts the community. We want to make sure that it is not just a project sitting on the shelf. And in fact, I was at a meeting this morning with one of the more vocal participants on the steering council, and one of the first things she asked was, when are we going to reconvene? So the answer is in July. The steering committee is going to reconvene in July, and that's going to be to go over where we are with the input that they provided and how are we using it. And then we're going to take that to the strategic planning committee as well, circle back there, and then bring it back to you all as an information item to show how we're using the work that the community helped us put together. So stay tuned on that, but did want to highlight that work is being done. You'll recall at the State of the District last year, we issued a mobility pledge to the community to go out and try transit, try pedestrian walking, try bike share, try all the things mobility besides driving yourself in your single occupant vehicle. We've been working with Lookout Eugene Springfield to do advertisements on there, and they're digital ads, of course, and we're seeing 98,000 views, for almost 500,000 monthly impressions. That's an estimate. We also have almost 400 people who have signed up to take that pledge itself. But I do also hear from some elected officials who have tried it, and they've not necessarily signed up, but they have tried it, and we'll circle back with that at the next State of the District as well. But the goal here was really to start to plant a seed that there are more ways to getting around Eugene Springfield in our region besides jumping in your car. And if we could get some of the trips converted over to shared ride or active transportation, and that really helps us with climate change, even more so than the type of technology we use in our vehicles. So that mode change is key, and we'll continue reporting out on this as well. I want to invite Wendy to the table now. We recently brought on a contractor for human resources. We kind of wanted to let you know where we are and what our plans are for reporting back to you as well as we gather data. So Wendy.
Good evening, board. Thank you for this time. Just a real quick update to where we are. On this picture that you see, a fun picture, is from May 9th. We had what we call our coffee and conversations. I think a few of you guys have come to that with us. We actually made it HR style and turned that into a conversation with Xenium, who's our contractor, Taryn Klein, who also consults with us on an HR basis, and then as well as the HR team. And we just had a very thorough conversation. We allowed the team to ask questions and kind of just do a really good answer and quick question and answer session. It went really, really well attended. And so we're going to continue to do that throughout the year. But the actual changes so far have been great. We are still in that measurement period of where they're coming in to just really assess our processes, see what we have going on, and then we should be done with that on August 1st. Then they'll actually start the true work with us, where they'll be actually doing the really full implementation at that point. So my plan is to come back to you guys this fall, probably October, November timeframe, to give you a really good update of where we are, metrics that we've seen, changes and trends that we've had, and to give you guys an update.
Today we have anecdotal kind of information. We're getting some positive feedback, especially from our bus operators, with folks who are trying to get different types of leave requests. Oregon has quite a few different opportunities to take leave. So really having that handhold has been something that our employees have noticed. So as Wendy says, we go down, get further down into the work, we'll be reporting back what success looks like and how we're tracking to that. Any questions? I kind of went through the first slides. Okay. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
MX Fair Validation Campaign. We get the question a lot about fair recovery. In fact, I had a conversation with one of our local legislators about fair recovery on buses versus on trains. And MX is part of a big part of the puzzle for LTD to understand how we are doing with our fare management. Recently, we put on at stations and on boards scanners where you can validate your fare to make your boarding faster. One of the features of BRT, which is Bus Rapid Transit, which is the style of transportation MX is that the boarding process moves faster because the fare process is done off board. The challenge that we've seen is, and that's more of a rail concept. The challenge that we see is we have this rail concept, but we don't have all the same features that you'll find on rail. So when you go to a subway, you have a turnstile, and if you want to hop it, you hop it, but there's someone in the booth and you probably get caught. And then once you get on board a train, you have someone who's driving the train and someone who's collecting the tickets. So we have neither of those things. So we have to really look at what's our ridership versus how much money are we collecting from that route. And one of the ways for us to do that is to make sure it's easier to validate and gather that data. That's half the story. The other part of the story is making sure that we have folks who are going out and doing fare checks. And the operations team has been doing that along key corridors where we know that there may be more challenges than others. So we'll continue to go through that process and look at how we're actually doing. But we did promote this new opportunity on social media. And by the way, this same technology is available on our RideSource vehicles as well. So folks can scan there. They can scan from the app. They can also scan from the card. They have a card as well. We did targeted advertisement with U of O students. Of course, they are one of our biggest pocket of sustained riders. So we did that as well. And we had a video campaign. We're starting to gather data now. This just went live, so we're starting to gather data now on how this is working. But you can see what's happened there over the first 4 weeks. I've been riding the service frequently and have been surprised at the number of people. I was a bit of a skeptic, but I've been surprised at the number of people who are scanning and actually tapping it and know how to use it. So that's been a good result. But as we move forward on the actual monitoring, we'll circle back with that as well. It's important for us to understand how we're managing the collection of fares. Any questions on that at all? I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to call Sarah Koski. Sarah Koski up, and Amy, you're welcome to join if you want to talk for each state. But we recently did a project with Oregon State University. We have U of O right in our backyard, but we wanted to play with the engineers as well, form a relationship there. And one of the things that we were looking at was, how does artificial intelligence and with the data that we currently collect, how can that help impact operations moving forward? So Sarah was instrumental in getting that set up. How we move forward will be with Amy's crew. So Sarah, if you want to update the board on how this started and what we accomplished.
Yes, well, thank you, Board Chair Birds Jamison. This project came through an organic partnership with a good friend of mine, Jim Couples, who is now a National Economic Recovery Fellow, and his good friend, Matthew Porter, who I knowingly refer to on my phone as our local genius. And so Matthew and Jim have been overseeing projects through the Oregon State University's AI division and machine learning division, in the sense that we have students coming up through the state of Oregon that are learning AI and AI technology 5 years in advance of what is currently being published and out now. Jim had seen the work that we have been doing with homelessness and advocating for vulnerable populations. His initial goal was to get information about shelters, vulnerable populations, and combine that with information about our ridership, de-escalation tactics of our public safety. We weren't able in time to get the homelessness data. So what the students did, and thanks to Amy and Barb of the technology team, was the students received a giant data dump. If you could think of like every piece of sugar and popcorn and candy and trail mix you could ever imagine coming out of Costco, pouring it all into a bowl and not outlining what that is and giving it to the students and saying, good luck, hope you know what you're doing, for students that didn't know transit, right? What the students came up with in 4 months is absolutely incredible. So they were able to play with the information. We had Barb and Amy on call if they had any questions. Jim and Matt both were supportive. They used a specific AI, and I don't know this stuff very well, Vertex AI Auto, PyTorch, I don't know, I'm making up these words. What they figured out was this technology that they were using to try and synthesize data wasn't as robust as what they wanted to do. And the robust platform was Google AI technology. And while the other platforms were great and a lower price point, Google was 5 times more expensive. So enter in Jim and Matt had a partnership with the philanthropy and social service partner from Google outside of Bend. Her name is Bree. Bree waived $4,000 worth of credits and only charged the project $1,000, which was comparable to what they did. What we found was really incredible. So understanding that there are a lot of businesses right now in the industry of trying to combine mobility management and transit and AI. Now, we understand that these students had no prior knowledge to transit whatsoever. And in 4 months, they were able to take data of all of that Costco cookie mix, right? And make some pretty darn good cookies. And so what they found was they could predict at any time within the future ridership numbers with a plus or minus standard deviation of 5%, right? They could find within 95% accuracy what our numbers were. And it wasn't based on weather. It wasn't based on economy. What it was based on literally was the price of eggs. And so these individuals, so both Matt and Jim did public records requests, public databases, the airflow, air quality, wildfire, arrests, all of this. So not only this huge cookie bin, but 158 different markers, and put those in with AI technology as well. They provided us with heat maps of different mapping. They found all sorts of different things about the work in facilities and like reports on how quick buses could get fixed, how buses weren't fixed. And it caused a lot of excitement with the students. In fact, there was 3 students who came on site to present. Pete, thank you so much for being there. One student was so excited about the project. He's been working remote from South Dakota, literally flew in for an hour worth of a presentation. Bree came in from Bend. And what we're seeing, and this is the really cool part of this project, right? And I'm so grateful for Amy, is this is an evolution and a step in the right direction. Not only is it supporting bright and youthful and active minds, it's opening up the door for innovation technology in parallel and conjunction with mobility management. But these students are so excited that they want to do so many more projects with LTD. So they've opened up all of the coding and the sourcing for the maps that they did. So I can look at ridership and transit based on like homeless shelters or different things that we're working on. Matt Porter, AKA our local genius, worked with Barb because Barb was like, man, I have all this data and there's different variables that I want to add in there. I don't know, like, I mean, how could we potentially like buy this in the future? And Matt said, let me code it for you. And so there's something called GitHub, which basically is a like an open source domain where all code can be inputted. And Matt, as a gift, he actually took a full week off of work, programmed a GitHub for us to be able to use this machine learning as a gift to LTD. So if we do want to use AI in the future, we have a foundation to start.
That's awesome. I don't know if I have to say anything else, actually. That was
I get so excited. I was trying so hard.
that was so good. I'll fill in a couple gaps around how we're approaching this strategically. So I think policy is important with AI. It's a big space and there's a lot you can do. So that'll give us, the policy can help kind of ground us in our strategic investment, how we want to use it at LTD. Continue the partnerships for sure. Jim Couples, local genius Matt Porter, Professor Bill Heil was the OSU professor. Just, I mean, partnering with computer science and transit and the private sector space as well. I feel like this is like a wish I made, 20 years ago, and it's coming true. So that's really exciting. And then we are kind of keeping an eye on the promising applications specifically for transportation. Predictive maintenance is definitely one. We think about like Internet of Things. You can put like any object somewhere on the bus and it's smart. So it can tell you like specific details about how the tires are operating, right? So you can have that, you're getting ahead of the problem. That's really interesting. Basic business efficiencies, this meeting using AI for notes. I mean, I'm looking over legal. I'm not committing to any of these ideas. We're our first step is a policy, but yeah, notes. Our mobile video, we're bringing on a huge mobile video solution that is going to help improve safety and provide a better experience for our customers. And it has AI capabilities. So there's a lot of good stuff ahead with AI, and this will only continue. But we can look forward to seeing a policy soon. I think we'll go through the strategic planning committee first, and then bring it to you all this fall. Is the goal. So,
and I have one more thing, I promise, Chair Gino, that I will be quick. When Bree came into town from Bend, she was so heartwarmed by just how excited the students were and how invested, both not only the presentation to us, but the questions and everything coming back to the student, that she wants to follow up with additional meetings on how Google can partner with Lane Transit District. And one of the things that Google is working on now is machine learning and AI video generation. So she has offered like different things. For example, I'm working on a project now where we're looking at all of the public bathrooms and water fountains, and we're gonna be sending volunteers out to kind of look at that. She and her machine learning could do that within seconds, right? And so she had stated that she's very excited at the potential of opening up some technology that not a lot of people have access to LTD because of the support that we gave to the students and just that really fun capstone project that they did. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It's very exciting. Any questions? Susan?
Thank you for the presentation on the project. It sounds wonderful. Who else is doing this, or are we sort of out there in the front?
Yeah, we actually invited the director of information technology for the city to the presentation with the students. They're interested, and there's lots of transit organizations ahead of us across the country, so we can look at them as well for ideas of how it's being applied.
Exciting. Thank you.
I think the current content is subject area is really exciting, is cutting edge, a lot of work to be done. But I think for the organization, the partnership with this organization, with the university there is a pretty good stepping stone for us to be able to tap into the way, the next generation of business owners and entrepreneurs are starting to think. And it allows us to be able to think along with them and to dream with them. What was Tom Schwetz? Co-create along with them. We'll bring Tom into the room. So looking forward to that and moving the relationship forward. So thank you. Thank you. Monthly performance update is on page 5 of there's a packet on page 5 of your packet there. A couple things to call out. Ridership over the last rolling 12 months is down 1.3%. At the same time, I think I may have pointed this out, at the same time our revenue hours, or the number of hours that our buses are picking people up, has increased 8.7%. So now is the time for us to be studying what's causing that dynamic. We are moved down the road on the process for our long range mobility plan, Connect 2045. I always forget to say it, but Connect 2045. And now to take a look at what does our service need to be for the next 20 years, but we also have intermediate steps that we need to look at as well. So we know that there is volatility with ridership numbers relating to when students are here, when students are gone at different times of year. But to see a decrease, we want to put our finger on that. So stay tuned on that. We were flat all year, but now we've dipped under the line a bit. I'd highlight also maintenance costs over the past month were up 31%, 31.4%. That's attributed to some rather big repairs that we had to do. Engine replacements, where are we at here? Yeah, engine rebuilds and some other bigger jobs and some OT that's associated with that. For the year, we're still under budget, but we did see that work happen over the past month. And then finally, assault reporting is down. You'll recall that the definition of assault changed. So it's including more things than your typical legal assault definition. But we're seeing a decrease in the number of, I'll say, negative interactions on our service. So we're happy to report that as well. And then finally, it's not on the slide, but I did want to share this. Our absenteeism is down almost 6% over the last 12 months. I'll attribute that to Jake and his team in HR getting in new bus operators, how we're putting the schedules together. and the fact that we're approaching things just a little bit differently. So we'll keep an eye on that trend, but I did want to pull that out to you. The other piece I'll highlight, I know I said I only had one, but the other piece I'll highlight is we have a bunch of new operators, so we have a bunch of new mirror dings as well. So we have seen our accidents go up just a bit, about 11. No, not just a little bit, 41%. No significant accidents, but we do have quite a few new operators, so that's to be expected. But we continue to support that. Any questions on any of the areas that operations report? Again, the summary's on page 5. Okay. I said flawless. We're not flawless anymore. Was that it? Oh, it was the end. There we go. All right, so I am flawless. The monthly department reports are in the packet. Any questions on that? Happy to take those in the delegated authority report as well.
Thank you, Jameson. Any questions on any of that information? Always a good report. Appreciate it. Flawless, yes. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have 2 items they've been seen by the budget committee and this board. One is the approving the fiscal year 2026-2035 community investment plan, also known as the CIP, and the other one is the approval of fiscal years 26-35 long-range financial plan. You want to discuss those, or are we ready for a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'll second.
Second by Pete. Any discussion? We'll do a roll call. Heather?
Aye.
She's saying yes. I got a thumbs up. Great, perfect. Kelly?
If you can't hear me.
We got you. Thank you. Kelly? Lawrence?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Pete?
Aye.
And I also vote yes, so that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the Strategic Planning Committee fiscal year 26 work plan. Dave?
All right. Good evening, board. Dave Roth, Director of Mobility Planning and Policy. And I've got a couple of guests with me tonight. I've got Tiffany Edwards next to me, who's the Vice Chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, and then Alma Jesus, who's the Chair of the Strategic Planning Committee. So I just want to thank them for joining me, and we're going to tag team this presentation. So we've got an item here in front of you tonight. We're seeking approval of the FY26 SPC work plan, and we're also going to provide an FY25 annual report. And I think we'll establish this as a new sort of process for SBC going forward. So annually, we'll provide the annual report and then the look forward with the work plan. So we can go ahead to the next slide. All right, so just a little bit of background. So the SPC was established in 2016 through a rechartering of the original MX Steering Committee. So that was the origin of SPC. And in 2022, the LTD Accessibility Committee was combined with the SPC. So the SPC has dual roles in terms of providing strategic advice to the board and to staff, but also consideration for accessibility issues in all of the work that we do. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Tiffany Edwards, who is going to talk about the FY25 annual report. And then following that, Alma Jesus will provide an update on the FY26 work plan.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Again, Tiffany Edwards, Vice Chair of the Strategic Planning Committee. Thank you so much for having me, for us. So I'm just going to walk through a few highlights from our FY25 work that we've been working on with the SPC. I'm making sure we're on the right slide. Is that it? Okay. All right. So first, the SPC provided input on the development of the system review recommendations. That's going to guide the fixed route service investments over the next few years. These are primarily focused on revenue neutral investments and to improve the frequency, along with minor routing changes to connect more people with transit and to improve system performance. We also provided feedback and input for the new STIF concepts, including a rural service pilot, the downtown Eugene circulator, and investment in regional bike share. Also, we reviewed the development of key performance metrics for rural service pilot and to gauge success on that. And we had partner agency presentations that were focused on outcome areas, things like health, housing, workforce, education, and coordinated transportation and land use planning to build shared understanding around the role of transit and LTD in supporting community growth and development. And so this is going to be important as we get into the long range mobility plan in FY26. Go to the next slide. SPC met 5 times over the course of FY25, and we have a table here just talking about our different agenda items in our meetings and the topics that we reviewed. And we had a really good, robust discussion. I think it's a really it's a group that's really hungry to kind of learn and get inundated into the world of transit. I know most of us are kind of lay people when it comes to transit, so it's always a good opportunity for us to just have the information that really helps us to kind of hand you off the things that you all need to be making your decisions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alma.
Thanks, Tiffany, and thanks, board and CEO Otten. We are looking at so Tiffany shared sort of where we've been, and we're going to be looking ahead at where we're going to be going for this next year. Again, my name is Alma Fumiko Jesus, and I am the chair along with Tiffany as my co-chair and Dave supporting this committee. We are looking at the FY26 work plan, and that is perfect up on the slide. We're going to be focusing on engaging in 3 key LTD planning projects. We're going to be looking at the LTD Connection 2045, the Lane Coordinated Human Services Plan, and the LTD Fixed Route Service Policy. Focusing first on our LTD Connect 2045, which is LTD's Long Range Mobility Plan. This plan has not been updated since 2014, and a lot has changed, obviously, in the last decade plus, but lots has changed. So it's time for us to engage the broader community on a vision for Lane County's mobility future. And that's one of the things I appreciate about the SPC is we can think about whose voices need to be at the table when we're thinking about some of the decisions that need to be made. So that's one of the things that I think Tiffany and I are most passionate about, that committee, that we can get those voices to be able to review and give feedback to this team here. This plan is going to help guide LTD's approach to mobility and investments over the next 20 plus years. So we're excited for that. Thinking about the Coordinated Human Services Plan, this plan is going to identify the transportation needs of individuals with disabilities, older adults, and people with that are navigating lower incomes. This is going to provide strategies for meeting these needs and prioritizing transportation services for funding and implementation. And the project is going to inform the future expenditure for both federal and STIF funding. So looking forward to that. And with our LTD Fixed Route Service Policy, the purpose of a service policy is to define the performance standards for the implementation and evaluation of Lane Transit District's fixed income route transit service. So this update is going to help us focus on several items identified during last year's systems review project. Example, the bus stop balancing, charter service policy, and evaluation procedures. So those are the 3 things we're going to be focusing on, including some of the, David and I share that items will come out of this committee to us to review. So we'll be adding on. So we're not limited to those 3, but those are the 3 focus areas that we're going to be looking at. The next slide has our work plan. This is a graphical, we like graphs so we can kind of see where we're at and everything, and very visual learners. So we make sure everyone has different ways to engage in the information. This slide shows the projected schedule for SPC's interactions with some of LTD's key planning initiatives for FY26. Again, one of the things I appreciate, Dave, is these dates are subject to change based on individual projects and progress we make in different projects, if priorities change or shift or other things are needed, as the SPC is here to support the voice of the community and this team here. And any additional items that we are planning for also include continued partner presentations to focus on outcome areas and coordinated transportation and land use, hands-on accessibility training for SPC, the board, and staff, and the addition of up to 4 new SPC members in September. So we're currently in the process of interviewing, we had 7 candidates, 1 pulled out, so we have about 6 candidates. We're doing interviews right now. In August, you'll see the slate of folks that we're recommending to join the SPC, and then you'll get to vote on those folks in September. That's correct, right? That's the timeline, or vote in August, and they join us in September for our next SPC meeting. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Alma and Tiffany. That was great. So with that, that concludes our presentation. I'd like to open it up for any feedback or discussion items you might have.
Any questions or comments?
How many people? You're having 4 new members, but how many are there altogether?
Yeah, let me jump in there. So we have 11 members on the roster right now, and based on the bylaws, we have 4 positions that are open. And so we did receive, we actually received 12 applications, and we went through a scoring process with Alma and Sam, our government affairs rep, and we narrowed that down to 6 people. And so we're interviewing 6 right now for the 4 positions. Yep. And we'll outline the whole process in the AIS for the August board meeting.
Well, I just want to thank you for the work. This is new, bringing the work plan to the board. As we move forward there's a lot of planning work as reflected in the budget, a lot of planning work, and this committee's input to the board is going to be critical. So we want to get them in front of you, once or twice a year to talk about the work and to make sure that they're tracking in the right way, so that as this body makes decisions, that it's been, the projects or programs have been vetted on a different level as well, and you can trust that that's being done. So thank you for the time that you all put into this, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Ready to entertain a motion?
I move approval of the Strategic Planning Committee FY26 work plan.
Thank you, Michelle. Second? Second by Susan. We'll do a roll call. Pete?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
And Kelly?
Yes.
And Heather?
Aye.
And I also vote yes. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item is the adoption of a resolution authorizing the chief executive officer to enter into a contract with Direct Medical Transport. And John is here for the staff report.
Yeah, John, come on, I'll invite you up. We also have Darren Musey online. Darren is with the procurement area and was the lead for that area on this procurement. What you have in front of you is a request to enter into negotiations with Direct Medical Transportation for services that relate to our LTD connector, which operates in Cottage Grove, and the LTD Rural Shuttle Pilot. You'll recall the list of STIF projects that were approved by the board and approved by ODOT to be implemented. One of them is a project that will look at 3 different service areas to provide rural services. We are keying in on several different focus areas, one of them being food insecurity. So how we provide services throughout our rural areas is critical for that, and for education, for work, for all the things that we need. We wish we had more money to provide a deeper level of service. We spoke with the ODOT folks not too long ago and described it as spreading the peanut butter just thinner and thinner to make sure that we're able to get some coverage. So we wish we were able to do that. The timeline on this was a bit truncated from the time that the STIF project list went to the state OTC for approval and then came out and then required an RFP. Now, what's also complicating is there is service in Cottage Grove now that connects to Cottage Grove, and there's also service that LCOG oversees. Both of those services use what's called STIF discretionary funds, so state transportation funds that are discretionary, which means they have a 2-year shelf life. Correct me when I get off track, John. All right, they have a 2-year shelf life. That shelf life on those projects ends June 30, okay? So the idea was to get these projects up and running by July 1. Now, looking at the calendar, we know where we are today. So what we have decided to do was do an August start date. So we have more time to communicate and to do some operational things to kick off successfully. But we went through a RFP process that started mid-March, March 19. LTD received 5 responses. The due date on those was April 23rd. A committee was formed that included LTD staff, LCOG staff, and the city manager from Cottage Grove. And we received 5 proposals, 5 responses. The committee narrowed it down to 3 to move forward. And one of those dropped out. They weren't able to present their proposal. And then the committee met with 2 providers, one being South Lane Wheels and the other being Direct Medical Transportation, and scored that Direct Medical Transportation would be better positioned to operate both of these services. So the recommendation in front of you today is to authorize the CEO to enter into negotiations with Direct Medical Transportation for these services. I would draw your attention to the resolution, which is critical. As you heard from the public comment period, this is the RFP award that's under protest. In the resolution, there is language in there that speaks to negotiating a contract once the protest period or any protests are resolved. Okay, so we have a protest procedure that's in our procurement policy. In this case, there's a 3-step process. We're in that process now because we're using federal funds on this, FTA $5311. There's also an FTA step after the LTD step as well. So I want to bring that to your attention. But we're asking for the recommendation today to allow that process to move forward, but also if that process is unsuccessful, then we'd be able to implement services for these folks as soon as possible. While we delay the service launch, we do plan to continue to run the service that exists today. So our goal is to not have a service gap for the folks that depend on these services while we work through this process itself. So with that, I'll be quiet and John and I can stand for any questions.
Questions? I have a question about the process. There's one step that involves LTD. Who's the decision maker or makers in that appeal process?
So that appeal, it goes to the director of procurement. And Wendy, no, Julie, you correct me when I'm wrong, and Darren, speak up. It goes through a process with procurement management, then it ends up on the CEO's desk. And then if it's not to the liking of the protesting party, they can appeal to the FTA directly, but it has to go through LTD's process first.
And the timing, if it's appealed to the FTA, how soon would the FTA be able to look at it and render an opinion?
Now, that's a fabulous question that I don't have an answer to. Okay. I've not crossed that bridge, but certainly could get some indicators from the FTA itself.
Susan?
No, Heather.
Oh, Heather, sorry. Go ahead, Heather.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I apologize that I can't be with you tonight. I'm on my way back from a conference in Seaside and did stop at my son's college apartment because I feel strongly about this. I will be voting no on this evening. I've expressed concerns to Jameson. I've talked with Southland Wheels board. I'm wearing two hats in this, both as the board member supporting this region and as a practitioner in the community that sees LTD, South Lane Wheels buses come to her building regularly. I was surprised about this. While I fully believe in a fair procurement process and do not want to disrupt or interrupt that in any way, I do believe that there are unique considerations that may not have been considered. And again, I've talked with Jameson about this. I feel strongly that the history that South Lane Wheels has with the community uniquely poises them in some ways that I would be concerned about issues being lost. I was concerned, of course, we all were, with needing to spread a little thin, as Jameson alluded to. However, in the spirit of cooperation, getting services to areas that don't have them, I was absolutely willing to, work with those concerns. I remain concerned in this process about homogenizing rural contracts in a way, looking through an urban suburban lens and not taking into consideration each unique community. I live in one of those and they are unique. So I will be voting no tonight. I do encourage South Lane Wheels to continue with their process. And of course, again, fair process, but there is a long history here and there would be a gap in the community. And I'm not convinced that bringing new outside services in without some of the unique rural considerations that our area presents is in the best interest of our community.
Thank you, Heather. Other comments, Michelle?
I actually share many of Heather's concerns. And as I'm looking at the information provided in the packet, what's missing for me is under administration and operations, it shows a total of points, but I don't see any delineation on how those points were, what does that mean? What's the context? What all was scored underneath that 20 and 30 points to get us to a place where I'm also very surprised that South Lane Wheels is in a position to potentially lose this contract.
Can anybody address that issue?
I think right now it's going through the appeals process. There's also the FTA piece, and then there's the judicial review. So there's ample opportunity to examine what was done. And I think the statements are made, here of concern are probably okay, but we want to make sure that we don't impinge on the process. So that's pretty much where we're at this point. I think let the process go through. There's as Jameson said, there's a 3-layer process that goes through the director. There's a written response from LTD that South Lane Wheels can appeal to Jameson, and then it can go to FTA and then to judicial review if needed. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to unpack this.
But go ahead, Susan.
Well, I would like to, I echo what Heather's concerns are as well as Michelle. In the waiting process, and, with all respect to the people who are involved, and I don't know the details at all, in the waiting process, as you were evaluating the two organizations, was there consideration for very specifically the rural expertise? And secondly, just kind of the overall perspective in terms of, this is STIF money, it's federal money, and the concern if you, South Lane, they've been doing a good job now to transfer to another organization, and the risk of, there being some gaps in between. And we've worked so hard to build relationships within the community outside just of urban area. And I worry that this would be at risk.
Any other comments from board members?
I have a question about the protest, and it sort of speaks a little bit to your remark, Gino, and what Heather was pointing out about there were some considerations that might have been missed. So how extensive is the protest? Does it go back to the creation of the RFP and what was included in it?
The protest, as I understand it, goes to whether there was a violation of the procurement process and the assessment, whether the assessment was unfair or whether I'd have to look at the OAR, but basically whether there was anything done that wasn't in line with either LTD process or public contracting law. So that's really where it looks at. And the proposal spells out the criteria. And so it'll look at what the criteria were and whether they were followed fairly according to LTD's internal process.
But what if a criteria was missed in the creation of the RFP? Am I making myself clear, my point clear?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that would have to be addressed during the process. And certainly there'll be some opportunity for South Lane Wheels to appeal it and make their arguments. I think that's what I would say is let the process run.
We're interested in getting this right, and getting it right for the community and for the integrity of the process itself. So we do want to have the process roll forward. I do want to, John or Darren, if there's anything you want to add in terms of the process, John, if there's anything you want to add in terms of the selection of Direct Medical and their experience as well.
Yeah, I can just speak a little bit to the process. So the procurement involved a broad selection of committee members that evaluated based on an agreed criteria. As was mentioned, we had both internal and external stakeholders review based on agreed and established scope of work. There is a wide agreement on a winning bid and scoring. And so the AIS reflects the selection of the RFP committee. The the selected bidder, as part of their proposal, highlighted their countywide experience, particularly in our proposed service areas, and I believe were scored accordingly.
So to be clear, you're saying Direct Medical has experience throughout our service area, which includes rural areas?
Correct. So that was highlighted as part of their proposal.
And Cottage Grove specifically?
Yes, countywide.
Was Darren going to say something?
Hi, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I was just really going to speak in support of John's comments with regards to both the identification of the scope of work, but also the depth and breadth and the diversity of the members of the evaluation team and how they took a look at the information provided, again, both with the written proposal as well as the presentation. So they worked through the process, I felt, fairly, and it provided a really good overview, if you will, with regards to the uniqueness of their positions within the organization as well.
Thank you.
Should probably add that if the contract is passed tonight and the judicial process and the appeal process favors South Lane Wheels, then that would obviously get rolled back, and the award would be, the remedy is for either the solicitation to be redone or for the award to go to the next proposer.
But the resolution, the way it's written, doesn't allow that to happen. I'm not seeing that.
The resolution is about entering into the contract. I guess that's true. And it says enter into the contract rather than negotiate the contract.
The procurement policy speaks to what would happen if the protest is successful.
And the flip side of that, if that's if we approve this resolution. If we don't approve this resolution, what's the flip side there?
I guess the flip side is the process could continue on, but it could take a long time. And depending on how it's going, once it's done, if it favors direct medical transport, then you have to kind of go back and put it before the board again and advance it. So you could have a delay in the implementation. That's the main issue. And I don't know how that impacts your timelines or your budget or the bridging services.
Would the delay in implementation mean a gap in service?
It depends on how long the delay is. So right now, we've identified STIF funding that will keep the current services rolling. It's about $40,000 a month. So depending on how long the delay is, that we'd have to cross that bridge when we get there. The advantage of approving this as is that it allows the protest process to run without coming back to the board if it's unsuccessful. If it's successful, then we'd have to go back and rebid. We'd go back and rebid anyway. But if it's not successful, then we have to come back, and it'd probably be at least two additional months on top of that, based on the board schedule right now, unless we did some kind of emergency meeting.
So my understanding is we're extending our current agreement with Southland Wheels until this process plays out, so that there's not an interruption in service. So
Right.
if for some reason this doesn't have, or whatever happens, could we extend that further to mitigate any potential gap in service?
Yeah, yes, Heather, that's our intent. The question is, when do we run out of STIF funds? So that would be the thing that would shut it down. The new funds that are available for these services are a different pot. They're a different pot of discretionary funds.
How much is in that pot?
This project is what, $2 million, John? The budget on this?
Yeah, the discretionary portion is about $360K per year.
Okay.
We've allocated about $630K per year in SIP formula funds. And for the Forest Service and another 90K SIP formula funds for that.
John, can you translate those dollars into a timeline? Like what does that mean for, is that a 4-month, a 6-month?
2 years.
What are we looking at for being able to keep this going while we're waiting for this process to play out?
So I don't have a great answer for you on that. The portion of the service that is most kind of analogous to the funding that we have identified is the connector portion of the service. The rural portion of service, LTD currently does not operate. LCOG administers the service. So there's a portion of that that's essentially outside of our direct control. However, we are making arrangements that we can provide continuity by being able to support funding for the service. As far as how the funds themselves would work, we'd essentially be borrowing against our formula portion of the service, leaving the discretionary funds as is. So it would be a little bit disruptive of our funding program. We're rearranging and trying to do our best to juggle to make that work. But the longer that time period goes on, the more challenging that becomes.
If we were to move this item to the August meeting, what happens?
If we move it to the August meeting, so we would have to continue service through July, through August, assuming we get it's approved, then we begin negotiations towards the end of August and probably have a shorter another, at least a 30-day startup period on the back end of that, depending on how the protest goes. So if the protest is successful, we'd have to rebid, and that's an even longer process. If the protest is unsuccessful and we wait to August, it would probably be early October, late September when the service could start.
Do you think the protest process will address the concerns that have been raised? And it's kind of a tough question to ask because I'm not 100% sure I know the issues that have been raised.
You can just say the statutory and rule criteria are not super specific. What they talk about is whether or not LTD failed to conduct evaluation of proposals properly or otherwise violated public contracting law. And that's just stuff that would have to sift through both LTD's internal review and then whatever judicial and FTA review happens after that.
If I could add to that. So there's a couple different answers to that question, depending on what the real meaning is. If the answer is, would it be resolved to the satisfaction of the party that would lose the protest? Probably the answer is no, if they'd be satisfied or not. Are there legal issues that or policy issues that were violated in the process? I believe that the protest process would pull that out. Are there selection criteria that shoulda, coulda been in the process? I don't know if it will address that. It could, it might not. I think the bigger concern that I'm hearing around the table, and quite frankly, one that I've shared as well, is on day one of service, are we going to be ready to understand the community and deliver on those services? I believe that we will. I believe with an extension of time that we will. Direct Medical does have experience, as John pointed out, countywide. Again, with any startup, there are risks with any startup, especially when you're changing providers, and there will be glitches. I mean, that I've never seen one come out of the chute perfect, and I don't anticipate this one to. If it does, we'll call it the unicorn. So I think that the protest process is in alignment with what we're required to do, both from a state and a federal standpoint, and we'll ferret out the issues of whether we followed the approved process or not, which is what it's designed to do. The other questions that are more qualitative, I'll say, I don't know. I simply don't know.
Would the board's approval of this, knowing that okay, there we go. It was flashing. If the board approves this now, knowing that there's a protest and it's not necessarily acknowledged in this resolution, does it somehow suggest that we're in favor of Direct Medical and we're in favor of the decision? You know,
it is noted in the resolution. The last paragraph of the resolution reads, once any protest period has passed and no protest being received and/or such protest being resolved in accordance with Oregon law and LTD procurement policy, this chief executive office or designee is hereby authorized to negotiate. So the resolution recognizes that if there's a protest, that needs to be resolved prior to any negotiation. So this is really protecting the timeline of how soon we can get service out and acknowledging that there is a protest policy, a protest process that needs to be resolved. So no, the board would not be selecting one over the other. They would be authorizing the essential winner of the RFP, negotiation with the RFP once the protest is passed.
Michelle?
So I think I just need to clarify something here in my mind. If we don't agree to do this tonight, we're looking at potential gaps in service, but do we have an option to do a temporary extension with South Lane Wills to continue that service
Yeah, we have extensions in our contract. In fact, the one that we're gonna do now is facilitate through the extension periods. I believe we have a few. The challenge that we would have is, you know, when that pot of money hits rock bottom. So we'll have to look at that as a team, see how many months we could actually go. Again, you know, this vote allows us to save time on the calendar should the protest be unsuccessful.
I'm struggling with this, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I'd almost rather just see it go out for a rebid and see where, I understand we have a process that's in place right now to vet out any things, you know, anything that might have gone awry during that, but we have to get this one right. And I'm struggling to say that I could vote yes for this tonight.
Well, I think before we would throw anything out, we have to go through the process regardless. Otherwise, we open ourselves up to another brand of litigation. So
I agree. I think that could potentially give, if we don't follow the process, could potentially give direct medical, you know, grounds for a protest, and then we're back at square one.
It feels a little bit like sort of rushing into making. Mine was doing that. Sorry, I'm
You're
clearly challenged. Like the cart before the horse kind of thing. I mean, if we know there's a protest, we're aware of it and it's been made. Shouldn't we let the protest occur and then approve the resolution after that's happened instead of ahead? I mean, I'm not getting this sense, or maybe I'm not hearing, or we haven't asked the right question in terms of the timing and the you know, having the funds. It seems to me as if if it's 40,000 a month, that there are ample stiff funds for at least a couple, 3-4 months, if that's how long it takes. And I guess back to my other question, approving this, does it expedite it in a way, in a prejudicial way almost?
Well, not necessarily, because it's followed process. Public contracting is very process driven. And it's really, this is a competitive proposal. So public contracting law is trying to make sure that it's done as objectively as possible and as clearly as possible and as fairly as possible. So what we have is a selection that was made, a protest that was submitted, and then I would be cautious about trying to, you know, kind of game the appeals process. It's a business decision for LTD whether the board wants to bump the decision out, and based on the available funds and the impact on instantiating service. But I would be cautious about picking a winner at the board level, right? So, because that could be a problem in terms of violating the competitive proposal process.
I think just speaking to the funding piece, the services as a whole do come with some expense. And what we've noted is that the portion that we've outlined for rural services has specific funding requirements. So we're not able to tap into that to extend existing services as intended. So we're essentially having to use our STIF formula funds. That's borrowing against the service that's intended for within the city of Cottage Grove. So the longer that period stretches out, it can impact our ability to be able to continue as planned for Cottage Grove services, because similarly, we're not able to use that rural funding to support the services in the city of Cottage Grove. So those are distinct pots of money.
So obviously a tough issue. Where I stand right now is I tend to trust the process. I mean, we set up a process. People went through that process. All the bidders did. There's been a result. One bidder is protesting it, which is their right to do. And and it goes through a couple of steps. And I guess I'm going to lean on, trusting those steps rather than me putting myself in a decision-making role to say no when I don't really have the information to do that. But trusting the process, it will go through one step locally and then the FTA. I guess I'm going to be comfortable that both of those steps are going to resolve the issue. And I think there's a judicial end of it too. So, the discussion is long and detailed, and we'll see how it ends. Go ahead, Heather.
So I've thought similarly about process and having been involved in other public boards. When these come up, it's really interesting because where we come into that, and I hear what our attorney is saying about public contracting laws. That said, we are being asked to make a decision about something. And I again reiterate that I fully believe in a fair procurement process. But I'm not going to vote yes on something because this is the piece where I have a voice in saying I have concerns. And I hear delays and I hear that there may be, but I'm willing to take my chances for this one because it will have a big impact. And I do not want to minimize what Southland Wheels has meant in our community because they are based in our community. And so this is the piece of that process where I feel like I can voice that concern, and my no vote will stand.
Thank you, Heather. Any more discussion, or are we ready to make a decision? I don't want to push this too fast. Susan?
I find all the information kind of confusing. When you talked about maybe delaying this to August, I agree that I don't think the board should be making a decision necessarily one way or the other, but delaying it to give the protest will still go on. So it's still the process. If we didn't vote in favor of this tonight, it wouldn't derail the protest process.
No, the protest still goes on.
Okay.
What it does is it allows us, if the protest is unsuccessful,
right,
it allows us to immediately begin the negotiations with Direct Medical rather than waiting until August.
Oh, okay.
So the protest is going to move forward regardless of what you vote today. What it allows us to do is get service on the street faster should it be unsuccessful. You're saying yes, unless the protest is successful, is what you're essentially saying here. Nothing changes. Southland Wheels has their day. We figure out what happened. We look at what the process was. If the process is flawed, we fix the process and start all over. If it's not flawed and it's something else and it's deemed as such, then we can move forward and begin negotiations. Otherwise, we come back to the board and we have this conversation again on what happened with the process, which we're going to come back and tell you what happened with the protest, whether it's successful or not anyway. But it allows us to save time on the calendar.
And John, can you clarify what you were just saying, that we're borrowing against our other STIF funds and we're not using the STIF funds that were for the Cottage Grove community? So there is an impact with a delay.
Essentially. Excuse me, potentially. So we have two different flavors of STIF funding. There are formula funds in which we receive an allotment and we've designated towards the Cottage Grove portion of service, and it's matched towards STIF discretionary funds, which have been exclusively designated for the rural area. In addition to this contract change, there's also a service change that's proposed. So the portion of service that LCOG currently administers is rural service that they have been using their own funds for. So to continue service, we would need to essentially be able to help fund that using STIF formula funds, which would be using a portion that we've designated for the Cottage Grove area. We don't have a clean mechanism that we could refill that bucket with our discretionary funds because those have exclusively been designated for rural services. So for our portion of the rural program, the longer it's delayed, the more those funds go unused. It doesn't mean that we couldn't use them, but we couldn't use them for the portion of service that's getting funded in the Cottage Grove area.
Lawrence or Pete, any comments or questions?
I have something. You know, I've been listening to this discussion. You know, I think it's important to make sure that we go through, that the process goes through. I'm going to be voting yes on this motion because I wouldn't have voted on with the original one based on the facts today, because that would have directed to just go right to the contract. But waiting until the process goes through, find out whether there's a yes or no as far as the protests is valid, or actually it's the wrong word, but and if we have to go through the process, the bidding process again, the motion if we pass it tonight becomes null and void. It has to go through the whole process again, and but if we vote for it tonight, that allows the flexibility of getting service into service as quickly as possible after the process has gone through. And I want to be clear that I don't want to stop that process from happening. I want to make sure it goes through, but also it's a practical matter of getting things up and running.
Lawrence, any comments?
Nothing that Lauren has not even said, so.
I think we're at a decision point unless somebody has more to say. Is there a motion? Can I make a motion?
I believe you can, yeah.
I move adoption of resolution number 2025-06-1826, authorizing chief executive officer to enter into a contract with Direct Medical Transport. Is there a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call. I'll start with Heather.
No.
Sorry, discussion. We'll get back to you, Heather. Did you have something to say, Pete?
Yes, I'd like to amend that motion. That it be adopted, that you direct the CEO to be into a contract with Direct Medical Transport pending result of the protest.
Doesn't that negate
That,
it? Yeah.
I believe that's part of the resolution. That we would.
Yeah, it's already it's already in the resolution. The process is baked in.
I think Pete's point is that it's not acknowledged that there is a protest.
Well, I think since it's in there, for the sake of clarity, I guess I have to accept that amendment, and I do.
Yeah, it's not, doesn't change anything substantively.
Now are we ready for a vote, or is that okay? Heather?
No.
Kelly?
Yes. Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Michelle?
No.
Susan?
No.
Pete?
Aye.
And right now we have a tie vote, and I'll vote yes. So that means the resolution passes. If I counted correctly.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the discussion. That was a tough one. Sure, we're gonna have more discussion about it. Okay, moving on. We have more to do tonight. Let's see. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Let's see. Here's an easier one. Adoption of resolution authorizing the chief executive officer to execute a contract amendment with Fortis Construction.
I'm inviting Todd Smith to the podium. Todd is the project manager on the Operations Command Center project. What's in front of you is a fourth amendment to the Fortis contract for the Operations Command Center. The AIS outlines the first three on page 1 of the AIS. This fourth amendment is for $500,000. And what that does, it allows for the construction of a trash enclosure that's required by the city of Springfield, installation of a maintenance and emergency access driveway, reintroducing some scope technology that were temporarily removed, and also establishes a contingency for unforeseen conditions. While there are 4 amendments to this project, the project does remain under budget. The total that this would take it up to is, I had this down pat before we had the last discussion. The total, the budget amount is $14.7 million. This was, take this to what, Todd? Sorry. 11.5. So we're asking that we add that additional funds to the contract with Fortis for the purpose of the construction of the Operations Command Center, trash enclosure, access drive, and technology. We'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? We ready for a motion?
I move adoption of resolution number 2025-06-18-21, authorizing the chief executive officer to execute a contract amendment with Fortis Construction.
Thank you, Michelle. Seconded by Susan. We'll do a roll call. Pete?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
And Heather?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is adopt a resolution adopting the fiscal year 25-26 budget with appropriations.
Okay, I'll invite both Pam and Pam Struss and Julie Lindsay up. In front of you is the 2025-26, what I call the operating budget. This budget has gone through a process required by law where it goes through a vetting process with the budget committee, as you know, is consisted of each of you and 7 other appointed members, a public hearing, and accepting written public comments. This budget was posted for public comment in April 18. Went to the budget committee April 29. A notice of the budget hearing was published on May 13 in accordance with state law, and the public hearing was held May 21st. And we also accepted written public testimony. We did not receive any additional public testimony as of the writing of this AIS. The presentation made at the April 29 Budget Committee meeting is posted on our website and provides the basic for the public hearing. So with that, we have before you the 2025 budget in the amount of $237,827,641, which will be the authorized amount that the district can spend during the next 12-month period beginning July 1. With that, we'll take any questions.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I move adoption of resolution number 2025-06-18-22, adopting the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget with appropriations.
Thank you, Michelle. Second?
Sorry, I do have one question.
Go.
Apologize. I do have one question. So the line, all resources except current year property taxes from 1,000,007 to 4,000,007. Can you clarify that?
Yes, this is based on a format that the Oregon Department of Revenue provides and a resolution. And we are not a property tax assessing entity, but that's where that wording comes from.
I
Yeah.
meant the numbers. That's just a significant change.
Oh, between the 208 million and the 237.
No, between the 1,000,007 and the 4,000,007.
Oh, and all of the resources. Wait, just a moment. Try to look at the detail here. Okay. So. So what I'm reading here from looking at the budget, that $1 million of that is the sale of the Hunsaker property. And the other amount is interest earned on our investments. We have been basically under budgeting our interest earnings for the last couple of years, trying to catch up with, oh, we got more this year. And then, there's also a significant increase on interest earnings, plus our Sustainable Services Fund rent is anticipated to be higher. So that's also included. So that's those two together are 2.9 million of the difference. So is that enough? Okay.
No, it's great. Did we get a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Lawrence. We'll do a roll call. Heather?
Aye.
Doug?
Yes.
Lawrence? Yes. Michelle?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Pete? Aye. And I also vote yes. That passes unanimously. Next item is adoption of a resolution adopting the proposed supplemental budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Yeah, so in front of you, we have a supplemental budget request, not that we've overspent, but we got reimbursed for expenditures from 2023-24 and last year as well from the federal government. And we did pull that reimbursement down, and we intend to do a couple of things with it on page 2 of this paper, AIS rather. You'll see that we do intend to pump up our pension, fund our pension. We know that we'll have payments out into the future. This will help us to reduce those future payments. And then we also intend to put money back into our reserve. And I'll have Pam color that in a little more detail than what I just did, or Julie rather.
So as you know, we have well, we'll talk about the expenditures first. So we have two pensions, the ATU pension and the salaried plan. The salaried pension is a closed plan. So the amounts that are getting paid into that from our employee base is getting less and less each year, and the amounts going out are higher and higher each year. That has caused our salaried plan funded percentage to get down below 80%, which is considered in the pension world being a little bit at risk. It's not red, but it's a little bit in the yellow. So when we decided in February that we were going to go ahead and access all of the remaining COVID funds, we had originally planned to stretch those out over several more years at $3 to $4 million a year. But we decided no, we should go ahead and get them into our bank accounts so we can decide what to do with them. We talked about various different purposes and things we could use this for, but any shortfall in the pension plan actually creates a liability And so we thought it would be prudent for us to go ahead and take a portion of this and pay some of that liability down. It will make an immediate impact on the funding percentage in the salaried plan. We also are going to put some towards the ATU plan as well. But it will make an immediate impact in that, and it will save us in the future from getting to a point where, okay, now we're going to have to put more money into that because now it's already in the plan, earning interest and making money for the plan. So that was the reasoning on that portion of it. The other part of it, for the $12 million to go to the Sustainable Services Fund, is that we will continue on with our plan to use those reserves as needed in the future. And so this is basically our increasing our reserves that will be available to us to offset any shortfalls.
Thank you, Pam. Any questions? Seeing none. We have a motion.
I move adoption of resolution number 2025-06-18-23, adopting the proposed supplemental budget for fiscal year 2024-2025.
Thank you, Michelle. Second.
Second.
Seconded by Pete. We will do a roll call. Pete?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Heather?
Aye.
Thank you. I also vote yes. So that motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
We'll get busy.
Yeah, get busy.
Yeah.
Next item is the formation of a bylaws committee. Jameson?
Yes, last meeting, we talked about updating the bylaws, and, you know, there are some things in our bylaws that probably don't need to be there, that reference open meeting requirements. And we want to make sure that what's in the bylaws can stay in the bylaws, and as meeting laws and other things change, that we update the board handbook. So we're going to do those. We want to do those two things along with our legal counsel, and have a committee to look at the work on this. This is not the big heavy lift like you did a few years ago. Thank you very much for that work. This is just pulling out some items that don't necessarily need to be in the bylaws, are better suited to be in the handbook, where they can be modified each year or as necessary.
Any questions? So it looks like we need a motion to approve the creation of the committee. And I believe we're looking at a committee that would sunset December 31st. And we're looking at potential for 3 members of that committee. So let's do the motion first.
I move approval to form a bylaws committee.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll start with a roll call. Heather? Yes. Okay, great. Got it. Kelly?
Sorry about that. Aye.
You're good. You're good. Kelly?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Pete? I also vote
Aye.
aye. I also vote yes. Now, do we have 3 members who might be interested in serving on that committee?
Shall we get the band together?
Michelle,
With
Susan, and Pete. Okay, that's the committee. Thank you for doing that. It's probably less of a task than it was last time. Next, we'll move on to election of officer elections for the board. Do we need a staff report before we get into that, or is it clear on how we proceed with that? Jameson, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So you recall that we changed elections to match with the fiscal year. So these offices would begin July 1, and this process can be awkward at times, but we just make motions for the positions of president, vice president. I'm sorry, you all make motions for the positions of president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. So that's kind of how the run of the show goes.
Okay, and I understand there's no need for a second for nominations. So we'll start with nominations for president. Are there any nominations for president? I would like to nominate Susan as president. Are there other nominations? Seeing none. Susan, would you like to say anything?
Your hard act to follow.
I guess we vote, right? All those in favor of Susan being our next president, just go around the room, starting with Heather. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Susan, you have to vote?
Yes.
Pete? And I also vote yes, passes unanimously. Congratulations. Next, we'll move on to the vote for the vice president using the same process. We'll open the nominations for vice president. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Michelle Weber for vice president.
Any other nominations? Michelle, you want to say anything?
Thanks, I think.
Okay, let's vote on vice president for Michelle. Pete?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
And Heather?
Aye.
Now's a vote yes. Congratulations, Michelle. So next we move on to treasurer. Are there any nominations for treasurer?
That's about it.
I would like to nominate Pete Knox for treasurer.
Are there any other nominations? I'm supposed to ask people accept. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. Do you accept?
Yes.
The nomination? Okay. Do you have any comments?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do a roll call. This time we'll start with Heather.
Aye.
Kelly?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Pete?
Aye.
I also vote yes. Congratulations, Pete. Last but not least, the secretary position. Open up nominations for secretary. Do we have any nominations?
I would like to
Nominate Lawrence
nominate.
Green.
Oh, go ahead, Pete. It's all yours.
Any other nominations? Lawrence, do you accept?
Yes.
Do you have any
No
comments?
comments.
Okay, let's do a roll call. I'll start with Pete this time. Pete?
Aye.
Susan?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Heather?
Aye.
Okay. And I also vote yes. That's unanimous. Thank you all for serving in these positions. And anything else for the good of the order? Oh, the July meeting is canceled. We do have a board retreat on the 5th. And more info to come on that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. This meeting's adjourned.